Hey everyone, how's it going? So I had someone recently in my free group on school, in this description, go join, asking me about exposure and your EV meter. And this is actually a super important question. Exposure is like so important to get right. And the reason for this is obviously you don't want your subject in your pictures to be, too dark or too light, blown out skin tones. And exposing correctly is super important because I'll give you an example if something's exposed bad. So right now, obviously I have a window behind me, or to the side of me. And if I let the camera kind of expose to that, then my skin tone would come out quite dark. And then in post, it can sometimes be grainy. And this has happened to me in the past. I've been shooting a subject walking away from a light behind them. I've let the camera kind of do its thing and expose correctly. And then when it came to post, I realized that actually when I was trying to bump the person up, they had grain all over them basically, because it was too underexposed. Their skin tone was too underexposed because the camera was trying to expose to all the light behind. So for this reason, actually, I think this was a turning point where I kind of started thinking, maybe I should actually start exposing to skin tones. But before that, I used to do what, a lot of people in the kind of camera world, especially when shooting in log, would say things like overexpose. So when I first got my A7 IV, I would basically just overexpose by 1.7. And, I just started rolling with that. And I guess at the time I could understand the knowledge behind it. It's like overexpose and then bring it back down after. It seemed to make sense. But I did find actually a lot of the time things were very blown out. So I don't know really overall if that was a very good piece of advice. And even now actually exposing on my FX3 or even my A7 IV, when things are a bit darker, sometimes they look better. So I don't know really the ideology behind overexposing everything. But anyway, now I don't do that anymore. And I found the most efficient way to expose is exposing directly to skin tones using zebras. So let's just jump into that right now. I'm actually got my phone on the controller monitor app, and I'm gonna just record my screen so you can see. As you can see, I've got a few zebras here on my face. If I jump into the tools, you can see that I've set my zebras to 70 plus 5. You can go in here and adjust them. So see zebras 70 plus 5. I used to always adjust to 65, but for some reason on the FX3 especially, I feel like 70 just works a lot better. It's quite small, but it does just work a little bit better. So I'll basically show you anything that's overexposed to 70. So you can see I've got a few zebras here on my face, on my hand, things are showing, and obviously the window behind is massively blown out. But this I would say is like the safest way to expose. And it really depends here now how you want to use that. Because once again, this is just a tool, and I wouldn't say there is a right and wrong answer, but obviously you can be flexible. You want to set things to the mood. So if you wanted to go for a brighter image, you could expose the shadows more. Let me see if I can do that right now. If I bump my aperture up to 2.8, you can see I've got way more zebras on the sunny side of my face now, but I wouldn't have any on the shadow side. So I would have ideally a fill light or so, but I've actually just got one little key light right here that I'm just using to light up my face. And I've got it on quite strong. And there was a reason why I did that actually. It was to just even me out from the shadow in the background. But I'll actually show you what happens if I turn this off and then try to expose myself to the back. It might be a bit too dark actually, but I'll try that in a sec. But personally right now, I would say this is actually a bit too overexposed. I would say the zebras on the sunny side of my face are gonna be very blown out. But then obviously the dark side of my face would be quite dark. So yeah, you would need a fill light in this situation to brighten it up and make things a bit more even. Because now if I turn this side of my face down quite a lot, obviously that side's gonna go down quite a lot as well. So it's about balancing out, but yeah, like I do have a lot of zebras here on my face, as you can see, and this would be too overexposed. So yeah, so this is too overexposed now. So let's just turn it back down, and I'm basically just adjusting it with my aperture right now. If I had an ND filter, I could do it with that. But look, 3.2, So this is about 3.5 now. I've still got a few zebras on my face. And by the way, the exposure now at the moment on my camera, you can't see it unfortunately on the phone, but the exposure on the camera is actually at 1.3. So the camera's saying that I'm overexposed, and which I obviously am on my skin tone. So let's just take that down a little bit more. So this is about 4, and there's a tiny few zebras here still. But to be honest, I think like a few zebras on the extreme highlights is not such a bad thing. I would say that the majority of my face doesn't have zebras on it. I would say this is pretty good. Yeah, I would go with this. So hopefully you can see that. The phone, for some reason, has smaller zebras than the camera. I think because it's a smaller screen, the camera really tries to show the zebras off a lot. Yeah, but on the phone app, they're a bit more slight. But as I said, I would say this is pretty good. And right now my camera exposure is overexposed by 1. Okay, so it is overexposed, but like I said, I just don't take notice of this, okay? Like you can't follow that because it's taken into considering so much. I've got a white wall behind me, it's bouncing light off it. I've got like this window behind me that's just obviously, telling my camera I'm overexposed. But I know that my skin now is good. I know that my skin tone is good. And when I put this into my editing software, I know that it's gonna come out pretty good. So this is what I'm gonna really, really wanna go by. And it's like the same actually if I didn't have this light. So I'm just gonna turn this light off. And then obviously if I didn't have the light on, right now because I've got this light on my face, I'm kind of balancing myself out with the window a little bit. But if I didn't have the light on, the window behind me is gonna be obviously a lot more brighter than I am because, I'm obviously a bit darker than the white window. So let's just turn this key light off. So right now, look, I'm way underexposed, right? Let's just take this down to 2 point. I actually want to move this light a bit out of the way because it's blocking the light out a tiny bit. And now my exposure is way more overexposed. It's 1.7 because I've taken the aperture down, so I've made it brighter, the overall screen. But the screen still thinks that all this exposure is like way too bright. So it's saying it's overexposed, but on my skin, once again, I just have a few zebras around here, which I don't mind too much. I know the majority of my face is quite well exposed. So if I wasn't using an external light, I would say that, this is pretty good. I would have to stick with this. Like obviously using an external light is just so much better because you can control the light that you're gonna have on your subject. But unfortunately, if I didn't have one, I would say this is pretty good. I've just moved that light as well because actually, even though it was off, it was creating quite a shadow because obviously, it has a softbox on it. So now you can see even more, right, of my face. I would say like this is maybe getting a bit to the point where it's getting a bit overexposed again though, because now obviously I've got a few zebras on my face a bit more. So if I just go down by like 1 stop, let's see how that looks. It's ever so slight 1 stop, but once again, all I have is now just a few zebras around here. And once again, I think that exposure looks really good. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just always follow your zebras, right? And what I tend to do is, especially if it's really sunny outside, like I was just shooting in Ibiza, and if it's a nice warm summer's day, I would tend to actually just leave my camera settings the same. I'd always double my shutter speed to my frame rate. So say I was shooting at 60 frames per second, obviously I'd have my shutter to 125, and then my iris and aperture, I'd normally leave it on about, 2.8, or the most I might go up to is about 4 if it's like a bit too sunny. So you got about 2.8 and 4, so it's a nice wide aperture, you get a really nice depth of field. And then my ISO, I would just leave, especially if I was shooting in log, right, I'd leave it on the base ISO. So on the FX3, it's like 800. Then I'd just have my variable ND filter, and I would just be exposing it to my skin tone, just opening it and closing it. Just kind of always on the ball, and I actually love shooting like this, right? It's just such a hands-on kind of way of shooting. This is obviously the beautiful thing about shooting somewhere warm and sunny, is that you have that hands-on approach, and you can just kind of just expose very manually. So the camera's not doing any of the work, literally. The shutter's just left nice and widely open, and you're basically just adjusting that ND filter to get the look you want. And as I mentioned, I would just basically be looking out for those skin tones and just exposing to the skin tone, really. Yeah, and that's just honestly the best way you can shoot. It's just the best way you can shoot. It's just nothing, when you go back to post, you'll realize just your skin tones look amazing, and you don't actually have to do too much in terms of the correction. Your white balance might be a bit off, and maybe it might be a touch off, like exposing it a bit brighter, a bit darker, but a lot of the time should be pretty good to go. So yeah, thanks for that question. And actually this was a video I've been meaning to make for a while. It's why I really wanted to buy an external monitor so I could record, you know, on the external screen. Thanks a lot, and please do check out my free group. If there's any questions you want to ask me or anything, you know, either just leave me a comment or just join my free group. There's a lot of really great people in there all kind of discussing, you know, about cool techniques and tools to be able to help you create better content. And you can also DM me from there as well. Follow the link below. I'll see you in the group, and also please subscribe.